One of the things that, one of the shared concerns between Gülen and the Sufi movement is this idea of how Muslims can interiorize Islamic values so that they shape and form their lives. And Gülen pulls out what I see to be two pillars of the spirituality or the theological dimension of the community that we, for convenience, call the Gülen community. These are the twin ideas of Ikhlas, which we may translate as purity of intention, and Ibadah, which is often translated as worship. Now, Ikhlas, both of these ideas have a long history in the Islamic tradition. You'll remember that one of the chapters of the Qur'an is called the Surah Ikhlas. And the aspect that Gülen emphasizes most often, and here we go back to the sermons, as Pim was talking about in the first talk, is this idea that everything that a person does how? In order to serve, to carry out the pleasure of God, does for to give pleasure to God. This is the idea really of Ikhlas. Now, he says it doesn't matter whether you're doing something important or unimportant, whether you're doing something big or small. What's important is that you do this for God's pleasure. You do this in order to serve God. This is the whole point of Ikhlas. Now, Gülen says that Ikhlas, and he quotes Rumi in this, he quotes Mevlana to the effect that, he says, if good deeds were a body, their soul would be Ikhlas. In other words, if the purity of intention, if a pure intention is there, then the dead material, you might say, of the action becomes alive. It has the soul in it. So he says it's sincerity or purity of intention that makes deeds live, effective, have everlasting value. And so with sincerity to animate deeds spiritually, without that, all human endeavors would remain lifeless, ephemeral, ultimately worthless, he says. But those who fly to God, he says, with purity of intention, with pure intentions, and with faithfulness, will fly with God's pleasure and will reach their goal. Now he goes on to say that, he quotes Bayezid, Abu Yazid al-Bastami, to say that it's through sincerity, not through human deeds, that a person goes to God. It's on the basis of a person's sincerity that God judges acts, not on the magnitude or the notoriety of the deed. The size and quality of deeds is unimportant. So it's this intentionality, the conviction that a person's intention determines the value of a deed, is in keeping, of course, with the Islamic tradition. Well, now what's the importance of this? The importance is that, let's take the example of meeting guests at the airport. There's nothing more boring than that, waiting around for the airport to go, meeting people you don't know, taking them somewhere. But he's saying, if you do this with pure intention, with the idea of serving God, it has value, and it has its value. The same thing whether you're distributing meat to the poor at Eid al-Adha, if you're working on distributing food in a soup kitchen, whatever, this has its value. And I think that this idea of purity of intention, pure intention in what you're doing, really has an effect in forming the cohesiveness of the Gülen community. Why? Because there's nothing that can tear a community apart better then people calling attention to themselves, working for their own recognition, competing with one another, resentful when the other gets some sort of an honor or a higher position or a more prestigious appointment than they. But the idea is that no matter what you're doing, if your intention is to serve God, is to please God, no matter how unimportant it is, it's valuable. I think this is one concept that really has been effective. And I'll just conclude. Since it is sincerity or purity of intention that enables God's service, he says to keep focused on serving God alone, thus making their actions, great or small, acceptable to God. If Gülen has been able to instill a sense of harmony and united service, Hizmet, among his followers, it's largely because of the emphasis he has put on Ikhlas.